Welcome and thank you for joining us. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. On the program today, we're going to be talking about energetic healing with quantum techniques. Our guest is going to be sharing how she came to be able to heal herself from a near-fatal disease at the age of 19, which was described in Dr. Andrew Weil's book, Spontaneous Healing. She then went on to become a naturopathic doctor, but her own healing experiences showed her that there was more to healing than addressing the physical body. So she discontinued her practice as a naturopath and became an energy healer. She studied a variety of energy medicines: Reconnective Healing, BodyTalk, general hands-on energy healing, Neuro Emotional Technique, and finally Quantum Techniques. She's here joining us today to talk about energetic healing. Dr. Kristin Killops, thank you for joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program.
Thanks.
Do you find that when you're talking with people about this, they kind of feel a little bit lost, like, how is this possible?
You mean my story possible or energetic healing?
Just all of it in general, I guess, is a good start.
Right. Definitely. People, we're used to thinking of healing from a medical paradigm, and energy healing is just not in that realm.
Mm-hmm. Now, tell us how this journey, at the age of 19, you healed yourself from a near-fatal disease. What was that specifically? What happened there?
Okay, so I was 18, and I was a pre-med student at University of California in Santa Barbara, and I met a guy and quit school temporarily and went off to Hawaii, which is not popular with parents.
Yeah, but it's great for the kids, isn't it?
Oh, it was wonderful for a year, learning to surf and body surf big waves. And anyway, but after a year, I was found to have severe aplastic anemia. Pesticides that were sprayed on the sugarcane fields near my house destroyed 98% of my bone marrow. And bone marrow is where blood production happens. So I was expected not to live very long. And so basically I survived on blood transfusions then, and there wasn't enough blood in the state of Hawaii to keep me alive. So I was sent back, rushed to UCLA Medical Center for bone marrow transplants. And back then it was in the really early experimental stage of bone marrow transplants. They were playing with this and playing with that and adjusting this and trying that. And anyway, so there I was. And a really beautiful part is on the flight, on the airplane back. Up till then I had just been a normal teenager, and suddenly I had this really amazing spiritual experience. And, it just became very clear, suddenly wrenched out of my life to face this fatal disease, and that it was important, like on a deep level for my soul or something, that there was some lessons to be learned, and that this, in a sense, was meant to happen. It's really hard to explain these mystical experiences, but it's just this really deep knowing. Mm-hmm. So then from there, I was submerged into the harsh and sterile world of bone marrow transplants and isolation in the hospital and all that involved. So I rejected 2 transplants and was basically left to die. The transplant doctors were then at the end of their ropes, and they thought I'd be dead within a week or so. Unfortunately, my roommate on Hawaii had heard of this energy healer in Los Angeles, and so he was willing to come to my room, and for the next 2 weeks he came 4 times a week and didn't touch me, just put his hands outside my body, up and down my spine. And this I'd never heard of. We've all heard of Jesus in the Bible, especially back in those days. But, we've heard of Jesus as this energy healer, but that was new to me. So then after 2 weeks, suddenly I was producing bone marrow, and that was absolutely unheard of. And so, of course, we were so excited, and I got to go home thinking all was great. And but then after a few weeks at home, I started developing really high fevers and was jaundiced and really sick, and was found to have a really severe liver disease that they couldn't couldn't diagnose. They didn't know what it was, so they didn't know how to treat it. And then again, it was so bad I was expected to die within a week or two. And then my dear roommate in Hawaii heard of this gifted psychic in Los Angeles who worked with diet, and she put me on a really, really, really strict cleansing diet because my body was so toxic at that point. My bone marrow was destroyed, my immune system destroyed, I'd been chemotherapy and really toxic drugs. And so then after 3 days, by day 3, my fever was gone, my eyes were white again. It was very clear that this liver infection was being healed. And so I stayed on that diet for 9 months, and I think it's why I've been able to live a normal life, because all the, the internal organs and different systems in my body were able to cleanse and therefore heal.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the start of it. And then so I'm back to life as normal, thinking everything's fine, life is good. And then all of a sudden, I was supposed to be sterile from having all the chemotherapy I went through. And a few years later, within 4 years, I gave birth to 4 healthy children. And again, that's considered impossible, but just shows cleansing and, dealing with your energetic body and your physical body can really be healing. And so, and again, I think, okay, life's good and I'm fine and everything's great. And, for 15 years I was the picture of health and vibrancy. And, people would look at me, and if anything, I seemed healthier than most people. I was really active and happy and positive and just, a very healthy person. But really the emotional and spiritual factors hadn't been dealt with. Mm-hmm. And so suddenly I started getting really these toxic headaches, and I would be really weak all of a sudden and nauseous and vomiting. And then I was found to have chronic hepatitis C, and this is the liver infection from back after the transplants, and they didn't know about hep C back then. So they did not screen blood, and since I had hundreds and hundreds of transfusions back during those days. So, almost finished here. In energy medicine, the liver is considered where anger is stored. And I have always been such a happy, positive person. I would hear that and think, okay, so I have this chronic liver infection, but I'm just not an angry person and bitter and all that. That just didn't fit. But then I started I'll call it spiritual work, and plowing into the subconscious and all the factors that, are buried in there. And there was a lot of anger, from my childhood, just unconscious remnants of what happened in my childhood. And so then that helped a lot, dealing with that, freeing the liver up of the things that made it stagnant on an energetic level, and therefore allowed the virus to survive because my liver was not free to function normally. So it's kind of a simplistic rendition, but it just shows, how the need to address all the different factors for me, or I would have died over and over and over.
Well, you certainly faced a lot of obstacles and managed to find your way through each one of them, but I'm curious, you said that you apparently had anger in childhood, and you forgot about this? Is that what happened? Or?
Well, it's buried. It's this subconscious. I must have forgotten about it. It wasn't apparent to me until I started to, plow into the subconscious and see, I had a dynamic with my father and my sister where she was born first, and my dad wanted a girl so badly, and up till then it had 2 boys, and she was the light of his life, and they were so close, and he didn't need a second one, and so the dynamic for me was always the adored sister, and no matter what I did, it didn't seem to be enough to warrant what I experienced as, his love or his lack of love, whatever. And so just the bitterness around that. I wasn't able to express it, and it got, I don't consciously remember. Perhaps I got in trouble for complaining or getting mad at my sister. I don't know. But those are the beginnings of the pieces. And then, of course, with these things, life just keeps reinforcing different patterns. And
now, as I'm reading on your website here, which is it Quantum Techniques.Tune? Okay. There's something fascinating here, and he was a guest on our program that Dr. Bruce Lipton says, and I kind of thought I would share this because it makes so much sense, and that is that he had shown that when the body exists in a fear state, it cannot heal.
Right.
Traditional medicine rarely gives credit to the role of trauma and all other non-physical issues in blocking healing, and that even non-traditional therapies rarely understand or have the tools for dealing with the prominent role of disassociated trauma and acquired beliefs in chronic illness. And I think that's an important thing to state because you tend to see, especially in Western medicine, a mechanistic view, sort of like you go into the recipe book and if you follow these steps, this should be the outcome. And that you forget, well, we're dealing with a person here that thinks, that feels, has a soul, these specific things, these things here. And, how do you address something like that? And is there a way to do that, let's say as a practitioner, to bring in that part of the healing process?
Right. Well, that's one of the beautiful parts of quantum techniques. There is a technique that we test. Are you operating in sympathetic overdrive, which is in that fight or flight state where you are ready to run from the tiger immediately? And that your blood is shunted to your muscles and your brain, and it's go and get out of there. It is shunted away from the digestive organs, away from different just kind of normal daily functions. And so it is not a healing state. And we, through stress in our lives in the present or through these unconscious factors, we might from our childhood have come to see as life or people or the world as very unsafe. And so on a background subtle level, we are in sympathetic mode, and it is not a healing state. So there is a technique. That's one of the first things we check for, and there is a technique to put one back into sympathetic or parasympathetic mode where that is a healing state. And I really love in quantum techniques how, the basic philosophy is that your body is designed to heal, and it will heal if it is allowed to be in that healing state, and if all the different functions are allowed to function normally, if the body, the different systems in the body. So, there are different techniques. And as far as getting down to those subconscious pieces, there's a couple threads that can come through. One is your emotions. Say you're one that has from their childhood that fear state. Okay, so you come into a situation, say you're at work and there's some big meeting and it's uncomfortable for you. You're not feeling like you're quite up to snuff, whatever. And so you're in that fear state. Well, if you in a board meeting, maybe you can't, but different times in life, you could just really fully feel the fear state. Forget about what it's about right now. Forget about, you're in the board meeting, whatever. Just go inside and feel the fear. And that fear will, because our subconscious kind of lumps things together, it'll say, oh, fear, like in an uncomfortable or dangerous situation, and then, oh, yeah, there's that other piece. When I was 2, that felt that way. And so it is a thread. It takes a little bit of practice, but you can thread your way back, just by feeling the fear, and then slowly you'll start to feel, wow, I feel young, and you might sense another person, a parent or whatever. But basically it's to be, one of the ways of healing that you can do within yourself, in quantum there's kind of different energy ways, but is just to be what you needed in that original fear state, whether that's somebody by you saying, you're great, you're loved, you're wonderful, you can do this, whatever it is, but just to be the compassion that was lacking, or perceived to be lacking. Sometimes it's not, it's our perception of the world that really creates our reality. So, and another way is muscle testing, because our subconscious mind controls the motor functions in our body and the different muscles. You can use muscle testing and find out just an amazing amount of information. Okay, at what age did this start? Who was involved? What was the belief or the emotion or the vow, or maybe it was a generational piece that was pulled in, that you're operating under. And so you can then find these subconscious beliefs, emotions, whatever it is, perceptions of the world. It's kind of like you put on these rose-colored glasses and you see the world through that and interpret it through that. And so that's another way to decipher them.
So tell us about the quantum technique, I guess, practice. What happens when somebody calls or comes to visit a practitioner's?
Well, most of the sessions are done over the phone.
Okay.
Because we're in the energy realm. It doesn't have the same rules and whatnot as the physical realm. We would, in a sense, create a field of the symptoms that they came in with, talked about, and then determine, largely through muscle testing, a lot of it becomes, you just feel it. What's involved. We will check physical connections within the body. Is it the liver that's really strained? Is it the heart? Is it the lymph system, respiratory system, whatever it is? Kind of what are the most stressed organs, glands, or tissues? And then we will find out, is there a non-physical piece? Is there a piece that's about a belief or a trauma in the childhood or a trauma in the present life, whatever. And you just start piecing together this field, and then you, with different energy releasing techniques, can help it to shift. And then in a sense, a code is made that specifically addresses these on an energetic level, and the person will find out, okay, how many times a day should they read this code that, in a sense, has been programmed into their body, that it knows. Let me back up. To program it, there's different acupuncture points on the body that are tapped. And so then those points become a specific code is created for that field, for that person, in that state of health. And so when they 3 or 4 times a day read this, and if they want, they can tap it at the same time. It's almost like they're getting a retreatment, a session multiple times a day, to put their body in that energetic state that will be healing for whatever is going on. And it's really beautiful because in energy work, shifts can happen so much more rapidly. For one, you can address the whole big picture, the emotions, whatever. But also, our energy body is made of much finer frequencies than the physical body. The physical body is kind of dense, more dense energetically, denser frequencies, and kind of more concrete. And so sometimes it's like, just pushing through wet cement to try and make changes on the physical level, where on the energetic level, it can happen instantly. And because our energetic, in a sense, body imbues our physical body, almost creates our physical body, then these changes translate into the physical body. So it can be much more effective and quick. Changes can happen more quickly.
Now, as people come to, I guess, be healed,
right.
I understand, though, that we're actually our own healers, that you really more or less facilitate a person to be able to get to that
point.
point.
We are
is what
absolutely facilitating their body to heal itself.
Yeah, because I think sometimes that's been one of the big challenges, especially when it comes to healing, is that we tend to take ourselves to a doctor's office.
Mm-hmm.
So there you have that separation going on right there.
Right.
You're separated from whatever it is that you're there for. Let's say you have the flu, so that was something I got from out there. It didn't come from inside of me, so there's another separation. And then you pretty much surrender everything, I guess, to the doctor because they know more than you do. So you just pretty much blindly, in a lot of cases, just do what's told
right.
to do. And really what you're talking about is more of an integration that someone like yourself helps someone to facilitate something they're already capable of doing.
Right.
That works?
Right. Well, that brings a few things to mind for me. One is when you go to a medical doctor, you're just addressing the symptom, which is actually the byproduct of what really is going on. And so just trying to repress that symptom, it really doesn't do a whole lot. I mean, that symptom might go away, but the conditions that created it are still there. And lots of times, the drugs are either toxic or have other effects elsewhere in the body that are not desirable. And, and I think, you brought up a good point that there is that separation. Where the medical model describes our body, illness is our body. It's like there's some virus or bacteria out there that invades. There's a flu bug going around and you might get it. Or else sometimes, it's as if our body suddenly stops functioning properly. All of a sudden you have headaches or ulcers or hypertension or something, arthritis, and it's like our body's not working right. Where in reality, our body at all times is taking the input of all this information, physical, emotional, subconscious, toxins, whatever, and making the best equilibrium it can out of it. And so it's a very different thing. And if you look at it more comprehensively than there's a bug that invades or something from the outside invades, you see how we're this beautiful, unique, interwoven tapestry of all these, psychological, emotional, spiritual, physical forces, and that it's almost like you become either fertile ground for something to take hold or not. If on an energetic level, say, for instance, my liver, because of all that anger, yes, there was absolutely a virus injected into my vein, the hepatitis C virus, over and over and over, but it could have been cleared by my body when I was doing that diet and, cleansing and just allowing things to function properly. But because of the, in a sense, energetic stagnation or clogging, tightness, however you want to call it, that settled into the liver, it just was not able to function cleanly and properly, and it became chronic.
It's amazing to think that sometimes we forget about the miracle of the body itself, how it all starts. It starts as a single cell. And then we become who we become. And this really, to a degree, for a huge degree, does all this intelligently on its own.
Right.
Okay? And so then we take the approach that it's divided into these parts when it comes to healing, as you said. We take a look at the symptom and that's what we go after, rather than seeing what caused this symptom. And this is pretty much, in your words, to be able to thrive is really what it comes down to. So you really set the standard of allowing this symptom to thrive. What happened there?
Right. I see it. Say you have a tulip bulb in your garden, and when spring comes, there is just this amazing force of life that, just bursts from the ground, and it's going to develop into perfect tulip leaves and this beautiful flower that'll open with the sun and close at night, just all these things. That is going to happen unless it's interfered with. And our body is the same way. Unless there are toxins or emotions or, whatever it is. There's a whole variety of things. We are meant and designed, in this, I'll call it divine. It's just this beautiful, vibrant force that, our body is meant to be that way. Mm-hmm. And then especially in our modern world, it seems like with the stress and the toxins and all the stuff, that hampers our body from functioning as it's made to.
Now tell us some of the example, or give an example. I guess people like to hear extreme examples, but how about one where someone came and you just, I don't know, I guess the best way to put that, it's much like for what happened to you. You thought of yourself as a pretty happy person, mm-hmm. but somehow there was this anger that you didn't know about. Someone that you worked with that was perhaps in that state, or is that generally how it is for a lot of people, where there was just this unsung, I didn't know that was there, how, and how did you get to that?
Right. Well, I'll give an example, but what's funny is now when I look back, it's like, I can see where that anger was, like, it's not expressed openly, but it seeps through the seams that people, looking sure. back over my life, it is evident, and we're just not taught what to look for, Mm-hmm. So let's say there's a little girl, and she has a very demanding, stress, type A, workaholic father, who's trying really hard to do a good job, to do well in his job, support his family, whatever. But her perception is that she just doesn't get enough attention from her father,
right.
And no matter how hard she tries, she's not getting attention from her father because he's always doing something else, or busy, or preoccupied, or, busy, or, wanting to have his time and go play, whatever. And so being a child, we're very open for one, but we also tend to think things are because of us. Like kids, the parents get divorced and the kid thinks, well, if I'd cleaned up my room more, if I hadn't been so, uncooperative, they wouldn't have gotten a divorce. Well, of course, that's not true. So anyway, so this little girl grows up and tries to compensate by being so perfect, and would, in her life drive herself to perfection and probably get, let's do a scenario, could get really good grades in school, be very successful in a career, and look like, the ideal life from the outside as an adult, have a nice house, career, clothes, whatever. And no one would suspect that inside, there's this nagging insecurity and this feeling that it's never enough, that she's never good enough. And so over time, this driving need to prove herself would start probably having physical effects. She might have heartburn or hypertension or, not able to sleep well at night, just this nagging, I'm not good enough. And again, it doesn't even have to be a conscious thought. And so, she might go to her doctor for the high blood pressure, and he could give her a pill, and the numbers would respond, probably. But is it really addressing what is going on? That mm-hmm. ground state that we talked about is there. This person, it might affect their relationship with people. They're trying so hard to prove them. She's trying so hard to prove herself, and, the lack of sleep, maybe a little irritable or snappy, or, lots of times stress like that will affect your digestive organs and your intestines, and, that's where neurotransmitters are created, a lot of them, and these have to do with moods. And so someone that has, digestive issues, it might be more prone to depression because the neurotransmitters which regulate moods and whatnot are altered. And so you can see it just goes, it just pervades the life, this basic belief that I'm not good enough. That mm-hmm. I no matter what I do, it's not good enough. And so, you can see, looking at it from two different perspectives. One is, oh my God, I've got this high blood pressure and I need some drug to control it. Or, okay, let's look at the whole picture. Let's address the whole picture. What's going on? You're going to address the hypertension, but you're going to address the whole thing. And one is disempowering, and the other way, the more complete way to look at it is just, okay, something's off here. Something is interfering with that vibrant life force in my body, and what is it? And so you come out better from having an illness. It's just this reminder. Oh, it's a little over that way. You're kind of heading off the trail here.
Right.
And it's a much gentler, kinder thing.
Just recently, we were doing a segment on Never Fear Cancer Again. And this is a prominent scientist out of Southern California who's been in practice for more than 25 years. And originally he talked about how there's only one disease, and that is malfunctioning cells, is really where it all starts at. And he says it's really fascinating when we approach the way that we try to heal cancer. And it's got about a 1% success rate with chemotherapy and everything else that they try to use, which I find astounding because most people wouldn't go to Vegas with odds like that. But
right,
we do.
Right.
We continue to do these things.
Right. Most people don't even realize. That's shocking to me.
Yeah, 1%, but somehow we try to believe that perhaps we'll be that lucky 1%. But then he says, there's still, you still go back to where it surfaces again. So even if you've burned it out or you've cut it out or you've poisoned it out, it comes back, and he says it would stand to reason then you haven't removed the system which caused it in the first place.
Right.
You got rid of the outcome, but not the system itself.
Right.
When you do the kind of work you do, I'm sure that you're probably met with a body of skepticism from people like, well, this is that hokey waving the fairy wand sort of medicine that doesn't really do anything, but obviously it did something miraculous for you and others as well.
Right.
And I've always been a proponent on this show. Is it effective? That should be the number one question. Does it work? Is it effective? Are people happy with the outcome?
Right.
What's that been like for you as a practitioner?
Well, I've been a practitioner of a number of different therapies, and each one had a really good piece, and I just wasn't getting the results that felt right to me. I became very empathic, and I can feel these shifts happening inside, just huge shifts within them, and it was just, maybe I'm expecting too much because my healing was so miraculous, but, it just, something wasn't there, and that's why I was so excited with Quantum Techniques, because part of it is going through your diet, okay, your personal care products, what's in your environment, and just testing, is there anything that is affecting, we call the field, symptom field, the state that you're coming in about. What is getting in the way on those levels? You're addressing the toxins, you're addressing frequencies of viruses and bacteria and fungus, different things that you will determine in the body. You're addressing, as well as then just shifting energetically, you're addressing so many aspects, the emotional aspects, that it's the most comprehensive I've ever found. So it seems to be, for me, it's absolutely the most effective I've seen. And it also mirrors what I had to go through. I had two psychic, I'll call them energy healers, that helped to pull me out of, my body was half dead, and yet I still was going to die from a liver infection. I needed to cleanse my body. There were just too many toxins, and of course most people aren't as toxic as I was because what I'd been through, but we are pretty toxic with the foods we eat and our environment, and And sometimes even the lotion you use, it may just not be appropriate for your body, or it may contain physical substances that are toxic. But even if it's good for one, it doesn't necessarily mean it's good for another. And so it's really nice for one to be so comprehensive and to address all those different pieces, but also to be so individualized. I'm not treating, this person that comes to me for a session, I'm not treating their disease. I'm treating right then that unique expression, that unique, energy, physical, spiritual, emotional, package. And so I think it's more effective because of that too. Because I went through naturopathic school, and it's wonderful. It's great, and there was still a little tendency to address a disease with alternative methods that were not so toxic and all that. But it seemed like it was really good to then add these other components and really treat. That wasn't fair, because they do also treat the individual, but it just seems like even more so with I'm sure other therapies. Quantum Techniques to me has been really beautiful in that way. And even with the hepatitis C, I had done so many over the years, IV ozone and different herbs to protect my liver, and I was eating a healthier diet than anybody I knew, and it was getting worse and worse and worse. And then when I did the Quantum Techniques, suddenly my body could get a grip on this virus that had been in my system. I mean, I didn't even know for 20 years I had it. And then, it's typical of Hep C, kind of that there's a latent period, and then all of a sudden it hits hard. But anyway, so it was amazing to me that I'd been doing a lot of very powerful alternatives, but it just needed the comprehensive package.
So it's kind of in a way saying that there you were searching for ways to heal yourself with what was outside of you, and then all of a sudden there was a shift where it was right there the whole time.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and they weren't all outside of me. A lot of, like, the IV ozone is specifically to stimulate your immune system. And it's very powerful. But But anyway, I understand what you're saying.
Now, because you do, it sounds like, a prominent amount of your work over the telephone, are there questions that you ask a person? Is it mostly that you listen? Do you become intuitive and feel what's going on? How does that work?
Well, there's a bit of a protocol you run through that just allows. It's very, very basic, but it allows on many different levels for these pieces to come in to the session, for their various pieces that are involved in it. And so, wait, I'm sorry, I forgot the question. What was the question again?
Well, it was about being over the telephone, that you do a prominent amount of your work, and, are there questions that you ask? Is there a feeling of intuitiveness that you use? What is it exactly?
No, I'm muscle testing a lot of the way through.
Okay.
And then finding out, it's finding out all the different pieces. And it's very specific. Very, very specific. Actually, it's specific or comprehensive as the body needs to be. You're getting information from that being, and so it's hard to pinpoint it to one thing because it's so unique to each individual.
It isn't a one-size-fits-all sort of an aspirin situation.
Not at all, and that's the beauty of it. It's really fun to. It all makes sense, when you start to see the pieces involved.
Now, as you have experienced this over the years, have you come to realize that we are all incredible miracle workers? We just need to sort of flick that switch on and realize that we're endowed to be able to do this? Are you speaking
bodies are? I'm not
just
sure
who we are.
Exactly.
It's a combination of the body, the spirit, all of it.
Right. I mean, absolutely, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I've come to see the spiritual work I've done. I don't know how else to say besides spiritual work, and I know that means not much to people, but...
Say spiritual work. We're pretty free-flowing here on the program.
Okay.
We honor all the traditions. If they
right.
make you a better person than you are right now, then you're on track.
I feel like we, at our core, are this divine, perfect expression of life force. And then we, through our lives, and a lot in our childhood, a lot happens before age 5. It's almost like we develop this little wall of bricks to protect ourselves. And one brick might be, compared to that person, I'm never as good as other people, or I'm a female and I'm supposed to be blah, 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 or, all these different fears and insecurities and interpretations and whatnot. And we forget that that's not us. And so the spiritual work is slowly meeting each piece and healing it. And then you do become, just life becomes so much more free and joyous. And, you don't, all the spiritual traditions of the world, have this ideal of what we're supposed to be, kind and caring and giving and, able to be happy in life, all those things. It more and more it becomes like I don't even have to try,
Mm-hmm.
It's those bricks in the wall that pulled it away from that made it hard to be giving to and kind to a certain person that might trigger, subconscious feelings in me. And once I deal with those feelings, it's the person out there doesn't even trigger me anymore, and I can be kind and compassionate without even trying. Life becomes so much more rich and joyous, and your interactions with people. So it's beautiful. And not that I would wish illness on anybody, but sometimes we need something to bonk us over the head and say, wait a minute, you can be so much more than this. You are so much more than this,
Mm-hmm.
And
it's just such a fascinating topic when people can find and pursue the opportunity to have that kind of clarity,
mm-hmm.
to realize that life is there and it's for all of us, that you don't
right.
have to go outside of yourself to find it.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that it isn't a little bit of work. Is it a little bit of work?
Oh, goodness. It's a lot of work. But
I tried to dumb-size it down a little bit, but I just
right.
wondered.
But the thing is, it's not like there are no benefits until you get to the end.
Right.
You feel with each piece, you just become a little bit lighter and a little bit, I don't know if this is a perception for everybody, but if I close my eyes and feel me, it does feel a little bit like a glow of something. The glow gets bigger and bigger, and there's sometimes it feels like no boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
It's,
And so I'm sure that one question you might ask someone is this: if life got easier for you, would that be okay?
We don't really ask those questions as much as we let those pieces come in. There may be a belief of, I have to work hard to have something good, or I don't deserve something good unless, because I'm so shameful and guilty that I really need to earn anything that's good, or I don't even deserve
Mm-hmm.
good because I'm so, all these things. We allow whatever those are to come forth in the session.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not really about direct questioning, although sometimes we might find out, okay, at age 15 there was this major trauma, you felt blah, 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 and, we might say, okay, does that ring a bell for you? What's that involved? And, of course, it does.
Mm-hmm.
And
sometimes you just feel like you're left without words.
Yeah.
Do you find that experience at times when you're engaged in a healing process?
You mean, are you talking about, say, during a session or?
Yeah, say during a session that you're actually with someone, or you're over the phone and you're going about business, and all of a sudden you hit that moment, kind of like the little one we just had.
Right. I mean, for me, it's an awe, and it's just a.
That's what it was for me in that moment, actually.
It's like a gratitude, and it just this, and again, an awe at the elegance and perfection of the human body, of life force, of all of these things that seem so bad on the surface. When you get underneath, I mean, it's just when you find out the pieces involved, there's such compassion and such, it all makes sense, and it is. And I mean, I find that with the quantum techniques, it's such an elegant system, that it is really beautiful.
Now, tell our listeners who have been joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program how they can find out more about Quantum Techniques, the website, all that.
Well, I welcome any questions myself. My website is Kristin Killops at quantumtechniques.com. And there is a Quantum Techniques website with lots of information. And anybody in the Portland area, the larger area around here, I'm glad to do a demonstration for them, or, they can email me, call me, whatever.
Have you ever found, Kristin, during practicing quantum techniques, that perhaps somebody came to you maybe with too much expectation and was met with disappointment, or does it really flow like that with everyone regardless? Because as you were saying earlier, it seems adaptable to everybody's unique situation, which to me is pretty encouraging. But has that happened?
Well, I mean, certainly, the timetable of healing, whatever, is not up to me as a practitioner. If someone comes in expecting overnight and they have really inflamed intestines that need healing, that might take some time. And, of course, on an energy level, things can happen in a second. I mean, it's really beautiful that way. It may not, it won't always, probably. And, it depends. There's so many different forces that can enter in. And some, again, with the toxicity factors in the body, sometimes it does take a little bit of time. If you have fungus growing throughout your digestive tract, well, sometimes it can take a little time on a diet, but it will change, and you will then, be able to eat foods that would have before exacerbated it. So, sometimes people come in. I would, instead of saying being disappointed, I would say sometimes there are those who really didn't realize how much they might need to put into it. It's different than taking a pill, where you have no responsibility except to make sure that twice a day you get that pill in.
Right.
It may be paying attention to what your emotional response is, or just I think it's just more awareness. More consciousness, more being present in the now. And, that's a good thing no matter what. To be more present, and less our thoughts are these little whirlwinds in our head, just constant. Most of us live through our thoughts, and it's being present. And that, again, that's the sacred work. I mean, so it all comes back to and creates what we wanted in the first place, peace and joy and gratitude and, just this appreciation of this wondrous life we're in. And so any of those things that force us to do something different from what we've been doing are all heading us in that direction. And so, it's a good thing.
There's no doubt about that. Again, your website is quantumtechniques.com.
Mine is Kristin Killops at quantumtechniques.com.
Okay, Kristin Killops at quantumtechniques.com.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. It's been a pleasure to have you on the program. You can tell that it's certainly had a profound impact on your life, and there's no doubt that it's doing the very same for many others.
Right. Yeah, one last sentence. Just my case was so extreme, and it just, even in that extreme, that our bodies can heal, and that life will present the necessary factors. You know, it's really beautiful. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you again for joining us on the program. It's been a real pleasure. We also encourage you, the listeners out there, visit us at beyond50radio.com. I'm sure we'll have a hot link there for you. You can find out more about Kristin Killops and the Quantum Technique. Find out more about that as well. Also, be sure to subscribe to our weekly news updates there on the website as well. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for joining us. This is the Beyond 50 radio program, and remember, live your day past halfway.